this is my audience. Marilyn Monroe, the blonde bombshell, a dumb blonde, a sex icon. Norma Jean Baker was known for her many names, and still 4 decades after her death, she remains a major cultural icon. Now imagine coming from being a normal average person living the normal average life, then suddenly everything changes. Everything from your looks to your personality, your entire life. Today I will tell you about Marilyn Monroe's past, how her life changed when she became famous, and about her famous death and why she decided to take her own life. Before Marilyn Monroe became the famous icon we know her as today, she was just an ordinary, beautiful, young, curly brown-haired girl named Norma Jean Baker. Now, Norma Jean had a rough life growing up. Her mother, Gladys Pearl Baker, had a turbulent mental state and had troubles bringing up Norma Jean. Norma Jean spent her first 6 years of life in foster care. Then her mother tried to take her back and suffered a mental breakdown, which caused Norma Jean to move between orphanages and foster homes until she turned 16, when she married her next-door neighbor, Jimmy Dougherty. In 1943, Jimmy left to join the Merchant Marines to participate in the America's war efforts. Norma Jean and Jimmy soon divorced after in 1946. Norma Jean began to work at a local munitions factory in Burbank, California to earn a living. This is where she got her first big break. Photographer David Conover was covering the munitions factory to show women at work with the war efforts. He was struck by Norma Jean's beauty and her photogenic nature, and used her in many of his photographs. This began her career as a model, and she was soon featured on the front of many magazine covers. After this, Norma Jean's life began to change. She began to star in many movies. She even started her own movie productions. Once Norma Jean was discovered, she changed her name from Norma Jean Baker to what we know as today, Marilyn Monroe, after her grandmother. After she changed her name, Marilyn began to take many drama lessons and got her first contract with 20th Century Fox. After her contract, she began to star in a few low-key films, for example, All About Eve in Nigeria, and later, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Marry a Millionaire. Although Marilyn was one of the biggest box office draws of Hollywood, due to her contract negotiated in 1950, she was getting paid less than other stars. According to www.biographyonline.net, she didn't wish to be a typecast as a blonde bombshell, just simply playing roles in comedies and musicals. Due to dispute over pay and acting roles, she was temporarily suspended from 20th Century Fox, but they eventually exceeded some of Marilyn's demands and gave her higher pay. In 1955, Marilyn sought greater independence from 20th Century Fox and began her own movie production. Although she was criticized by the media, she was later nominated for Golden Globe's Best Actress Award for Bus Stop in 1956. And in 1959, she won a Golden Globe for her role in Some Like It Hot. Marilyn also had many lovers in her life. I already mentioned her first husband before, Jimmy Dougherty. But in 1954, she married her second husband, baseball star Joe DiMaggio, a friend of over 2 years. But the relationship quickly strained due to his jealous and controlling nature, and they divorced in 1955. In 1956, Marilyn Monroe married playwright Arthur Miller. According to www.biographyonline.net, the marriage received significant interest from the media for the combination of Miller, the left-wing intellectual, and Marilyn, the dumb blonde. The marriage was often referred to unkindly as egghead weds hourglass. Media bosses encouraged Marilyn to end the relationship, but Marilyn refused. Otherwise, the cruel reactions from the media over their recent marriage, Marilyn seemed to have everything: her dream husband, her star roles in movies, but there were often times where she felt lonely or depressed. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, her health began to deteriorate. She suffered from barbiturate addiction and periods of depression. One of Marilyn's greatest fears was disappointing those she cared about. Marilyn and Arthur were happily living in Amixet of Long Island until she stumbled upon a diary entry of Miller's, which he complained he was disappointed of her and embarrassed. The relationship began to break down, and Marilyn had affairs with men such as Yves Montand, Frank Sinatra, John F. Kennedy, and more. Marilyn Monroe and Arthur Miller divorced in 1961. According to www.vanityfair.com, in one of Marilyn's diaries, she wrote, "Alone. I am alone. I am always alone, no matter what." After the divorce, Marilyn was broken and felt empty inside, but she felt she had the media and her fans to rely on. August 5th, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead at the young age of 36 in her home in Los Angeles, California. According to www.history.com, she was found lying face down on her bed with a telephone in her hand. She died of an overdose of barbiturates. Today I told you about Marilyn Monroe before she became famous, her life, how her life changed when she did become famous, and about her famous death. Now I ask you, do you believe Marilyn Monroe was still a dumb blonde, a sex icon, or any of the other names I mentioned before? Or do you believe that she was more than the people thought of her? Thank you.